Yeah,
Here's
but
the intro.
the good news is that we're here and we are together.
We're a little
Hello,
dark though.
everyone, and we
I,
are
I,
happy that you're
I
joining
must
us in the
say, I
place.
haven't seen a full episode, but you normally have like rave lights or some stuff going on in the back, and right now I just see you kind of in the black.
I'm not in the black. This is super well lit. This is I've got a ring light that's happening now.
Well, you
That's a
moved forward now, so you came up a little bit, but
oh, I do you want me to, like if I'm too dark for you, just listen, man. You're the guest. I'm the
hey,
host.
hey,
The screen's
what
at full
about the
brightness
background?
now. The only thing I could
Don't you
do is
normally
turn on
have
the
like
room.
rave lights,
I
like colored lights?
I'm working. Hold on.
I'm
Is
wearing a
that
black shirt. We got to do
I
some balance.
is that I thought you were just trying to be techno for me. Is that here
That's that's better. There you go. That feels like how I spent many evenings of my
with
youth.
me?
Yeah, yeah. And a little bit of some blacklight reflection
It right? Okay.
in some back room. If this air conditioner was a baseline, it would be to a T.
I got totally frazzled by that. So we've got this new scenario happening right now. Uh, as you can see, the new overlay. What do you think? Can you see it? Are you on screen at the same time, or you're just looking at me? You're not doing anything else.
I'm
That's good
just
that you're not
looking at
seeing me.
you. I mean, I see me, but it's not the one that you're broadcasting, so I don't even know if I'm in view or not in view or what's going on. That's okay. Because we're not doing this by my computer. You wanted me to go into the utility room. And
No,
this is actually a camera trick. This is a utility closet. If you could
this
zoom out,
was this
the
was the type
laptop
of
is on the
thing.
other side of the door. It's in like the regular area, and
Okay.
I am in the closet. So this is my coming out party.
So we're underground together.
We are both underground together. Yes,
Okay.
roots,
So
roots and
hello,
culture.
everyone. And
Hey,
we are happy that you're joining us in the place that's genuinely underground, but you won't need a shovel for the dig. And when trying to think on an appropriate intro for our session tonight, I was trying my best to wrap up and summarize the adventures that our guest has had and is having. It was tough, but I wanted to streamline it, and this is what I could come up with. Our guest is a raver. Tonight, we are joining virtual hands with the other half of Destiny. Listening to our podcast and stream, we've had numerous references to raves that have happened and are happening with one of the longest running electronic promotional groups in Canada and North America. Navigating the changing times and keeping audiences entertained is no small feat, and we're going into the room where we're going to get some dynamite answers to the important questions like, is raving in our destiny? Please welcome to the show, Jesse Brown.
boom!
Wha- Boom, you're with us. I love it.
Hit the Q button.
I
This
feel
is when the lasers go off.
I need to get you. I need to get you more centered. How do we? We
Okay,
got to
so how
move.
do we do? You're gonna have to show me your screen again one more time.
I'm not. I can't share the screen. That would be
If I go
absolute.
this
Yeah,
way
yeah.
in my
Stop. Hey,
normal,
no, no. That's too far. That's too far. A little. Oh, yeah, yeah. Great.
how's that?
I'm gonna start off with probably one of the most important questions, actually, for real, which is why are you a rave promoter?
I really should have thought of all these answers ahead of time, and then this show would probably go better. But I will do my best.
The show's gonna go great. I already know.
It's I guess a labor of love thing. Maybe how it all started. Um, my first rave, the famous when was your first rave story? I guess it would be grade 9. I don't know how old that is. Grade 7, you're 13. Grade 8, you're 14. So I was 15 years old. Was my first rave. I didn't know it at the time, but it was one of Tyler Cho's party. Tyler from later to go on with Life Force. It was called Bump Ahead 2, and it was at Young and Isabella, the location that later became Spin Cat, which was the basement 2, if you remember that. It's now a gym, I believe.
You mean Bathurst and
No, it was on Young. There's a gym there. So, yes, the basement was at Bathurst and Richmond. No, Bathurst and Queen. At one point, they closed and they reopened under a name Spin Cat, and it was like an upstairs venue off
think I
Young
was
Street.
there one time.
You definitely were there probably more than one time because it operated under a few names. Then
Okay, I'll take your word
it
on it.
got sketchy once upon a time, and then there was a shooting, and that was pretty much the end of it. And now it's a gym. Yeah, a security guard or something got shot. Unfortunately, nothing to do with us, but that's the history of that venue and how it eventually no longer became a nightclub. Um, Once upon a time, I did go to. Oh, you frozen. Have I lost you? No, we're good.
I hear you. Yeah,
Did go to that party. I liked it. I had a great time. I didn't go to another party until the Cyrus 5-year anniversary. That was 1998. That was at the Warehouse, which later became the Cool House, but at the time it was called the Warehouse. And then they would actually open up to the rest of the Gov later on when the Gov was doing Top 40 before they were a dance club and before Charles had started doing any of the electronic stuff. So I had a good time there. I went really hardcore, got out of it, came back. Um, we'll fast forward a few years. At one point, I met a guy named Aaron Mix at Eastern Bloc. You used to work at Eastern Bloc. I remember you back then.
if you want to call it work, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Hey, you were definitely hustling. You were working.
I did
Um,
stuff.
yeah, you did stuff.
I don't know if
We were young and in high school. I had a friend of mine. We like home DJ'd. We would go down there. It was like a big deal to go once a week and get all the new releases and stuff like that. It was good times. I was into the music, and I met that dude named Aaron Mix. He was there like picking up tickets or something for one of the Life Force shows. And I said, hey, I really like your stuff. I'd like to be more involved. And he took down my name and number, hit me up on my pager because there were no cell phones back then, but we did have pagers, and started sending me flyers. From there, it went to getting to know more people and joining the Life Force Street team. Had a lot of fun, in that aspect. Life Force kind of eventually folded, and I had a desire to keep stuff going. And through doing Life Force, I had met Ryan Kruger. I guess with the WEMF events, yeah, it would have been WEMF at the time. And I just approached him and I said, like, look, this is coming to an end. I want to do shows. Let's do something together and keep this going. And that's when we did our first Destiny together, which would have been New Year's 2000 and December 31st, 2002. So going into 2003, that was the first Destiny party I did with Ryan as a partner. We took Destiny into a different direction then, which was drum and bass. Ryan wasn't so into it originally at the time, and Destiny
Okay,
wasn't.
well, you're doing a whole like. So,
Okay, yeah,
firstly, what insight did you have going? You were doing flyers for Life Force.
yes,
So what does that
yes.
mean? Like you were standing outside of
I was
nightclubs and you were
standing on street corners on nightclubs, like at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning when people start to come out. So originally, Aaron would send me a box of flyers, and I would like hook them up in areas in my school, pass them out in high school, try and talk a few people into going, and I would go and we'd have fun, and that was that. And then it became a paid gig, where in the evenings we would go to clubs and stuff, and then like at the time when people start to leave, we would have a team outside, and that was the source of promo at the time. You were standing on the street corner or standing outside the club with a crew of all sorts of other flyer people, handing out pieces of paper because the internet wasn't so far then. There was a little bit of stuff and there was online promo happening, but not too much. It was pretty much flyers and an info line. And an info line was basically like a voicemail or a pager where people would call and it would have information on where the party's happening and where you would go. And through
the
doing that, I met lots of people. I know you want to go. I met people in
no,
the
it's not.
industry.
It's not that. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's just like you're talking about some tremendous leaps here. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think to myself. Let's say, for example, like if you were to think to yourself, be like, okay, cool. I've got promotion figured out on a street level, on a guerrilla level. I know how to go ahead and get these flyers into somebody's hand, and more. Just be like, this isn't just me handing you a flyer. This is me. You got to come to this party. This is the reason why. And where did the insight come from? To like you approach Ryan and for example, when you're like, yo, put me in, let's go together. And why was that insight? Like what insight did you gather from what you were doing on the street level of for promotion to go and start doing, because I mean, Destiny, I'm sure they've thrown some intimate parties, but at the same time, I mean, predominantly they're bigger events.
Yeah, I mean that's all true. Um, I thought it would be. I did learn from Insight. I learned a lot about like the marketing perspective, and it gave me ideas. Oh, the air conditioning's finally shutting down. That's like a blessing.
I could barely hear it. And listen, the mechanics of the utility room add to the ambience. We had fan diet.
Okay.
He was very
Yeah.
specific about that.
Just putting that out there. I learned marketing. You talk to a lot of people. You get feedback directly on the stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, now kind of the feedback is the comment section of the internet, but you never know if that's legit feedback or if it's someone trying to screw with you or if it's someone just trolling or if it's someone just, that's how they get their kicks. Or back then you had legitimate conversations with people. You could tell they weren't screwing with you, or if they were like fucking with you, you could tell that they're not interested. They're just fucking with you, and that's that. But you got a grip and a handle of the vibe, and then going to the events, you got into the music. I liked it. I followed it. That was like my passion and my hobby, and it was great to be able to then take that to the next step and give people the experience that I grew up with or I got to have.
But it wasn't just promotion. It wasn't just flyers on a street level. You were also DJing. You had a DJ name, Original Vibe.
True. Yes. I started off wanting to be a DJ. I realized soon after that DJing wasn't for me, and it was all about being a promoter. So originally, I did play the first few Destiny parties, but I was usually stressed out, or there was too much on my mind, or preoccupying me with what's going on, throwing the event, that it faded off. And when I took that like weight off my shoulders and didn't have to also concentrate on DJing, I kind of went in that direction, and that's what I ran with. I always thought I would still kind of DJ in the back. Unfortunately, when I downsized and I went from a condo to a house, I sold all my records and my decks, and I do regret it now. But I mean, at the same time,
Why? Why the regret?
I invested a lot of time and money into it. It's like something that still means it's every once in a while someone like Brad Lush will upload a video showing the original record player, and I'm like, oh, I want to touch that vinyl. I can still picture in my head the order they would go in and how I used to organize it and try and put the stuff together. And if I knew the digital revolution would go the way it did, it made it so much easier to keep on going, that you could get rid of these things and keep playing. Like, back in the day, I mean, I don't need to tell you, but to be a DJ, you needed a lot of space because the records took up so much effing space. So you were buying like all these IKEA shelves and milk crates and all this other stuff, and they were growing and growing and growing. Where, if it was so easy to digitize and stuff, I would keep it going, and it would be fun to still play with, and it would be fun to like get my kids and show them how I used to do it and stuff like that. But anyway, it's that ship has sailed. I hope other people are enjoying the records that I spent so much time like digging and trying to acquire. And I mean, at the end of the day, there's still something to be said. If you haven't touched these things in years, then maybe it's time to let them go.
You have a visitor?
Yeah, I have the cat who's wondering what I'm doing down here.
Being a promoter and a DJ isn't so uncommon. There is that combination, and promoter DJ combinations will play themselves at their own events. And often the case is that's the nature of, or the way that the path that they're able to play, right? So that they can have their own form, while also showcasing music that they would be interested in. And so Original Vibe was at Destiny at one point. You were playing yourself, but then you hit the brakes on it.
I did. I guess I didn't expect Destiny to be as busy and to grow as fast and do as much stuff as we did internally. Also, if I was further along in my DJing, I think, and then started Destiny, it would have been the perfect career launch, and I could have taken it off and I could have done both. But it was at a point where I had to focus on one or the other. And so, I came into it with the intention of like, I'll do Destiny, I'll do some shows, it'll launch my DJ career, and that's great. And it veered off into, no, I just got to focus on doing these events, bringing this music to more people, who else like has never heard this stuff, who's never experienced it, what can I do to keep showcasing these sounds? You know, especially then when it wasn't mainstream, right? Like now it's very different. It's easy to get exposure to all of this, but back in, you know, when I started Destiny, the early 2000s, it was still a very, like, especially drum and bass and stuff, it was a very mix. It was very underground. It was very niche music.
How has social media impacted the rave scene?
Well, I mean, it changed the way you promote. If you want to look from a marketing perspective, I kind of touched on that earlier. We used to do flyers. You know, now it's online. It allows you to judge and get feedback from people of what they're thinking. So, for instance, you know, how many fans follow each DJ, whether that's real or fake, it's still some sort of kind of it's some sort of a gauge into what people are into in
How
terms
is
of who
the
to bring.
illusion or the fake numbers, bots, or the various different forms of presentation on numbers that aren't really true numbers? How is that a gauge?
Well, I mean that so not true numbers still kind of always existed. So you know, even if back in the day, one of the gauges was the DJ Mag Top 100. That was their annual magazine. Everyone like cared about that. It was, you know, who's going to be in the top 100, who's going to be the number one, whether it was Tiesto or Carl Cox or Oakenfold some years. I think I have an old DJ Mag 100 upstairs in my office. I've kept the odd clippings and rave memorabilia from the days. But there were lots of stories of that being rigged, where people would hire people to mail in votes and stuff like that, you know, and it would get your number up. And if you could say you were one of the top 100 DJs, that would get you more bookings, that would get you more money, stuff like that. And that was skewed. So all I'm really saying is there were fake numbers before the internet and there's fake numbers after. It just, digital stuff made it easier to fake things or to do things, you know, in the masses. And that's just, you know, that's obviously across the board, not just for kind of rankings. But at the end of the day, you can tell something's fake when if something is, you know, millions and millions of people to view it and you book this guy and only 10 people show up, well, obviously there's something wrong here, because if there were millions of people following this artist, more than 10 people would care to buy a ticket.
Do you feel that the gauge has somehow not worked? It is like I'm just trying to figure out how you were able to figure it out. Like because I can't tell. Because I just finished watching a documentary on HBO, and I can't remember the title of it right now as it's escaping, which is terrible because I'm trying to quote it, use it as a reference, and I don't have it right now in my brain. But this just happened. There's a doc on HBO, and a social media guru type is the producer and director of this doc, and he takes three individuals and turns them into Instagram celebrities over a short period of time, and shows a
Cool.
process on how this person is doing it, and of course the effects on the people that he's boosting at the same time. I felt like while I was watching this documentary that it was a bit like an advertisement, because this was like, this is how to market. This is how to market now in 2021. And so when the follows are being purchased and the posts are being boosted and then the likes are being boosted and then and then the comments are also happening as well, and then so the engagement is all flourishing simultaneously with the presentation. How can we tell?
I guess you can. um, you know, you go to shows, you see stuff, you see people into it, that's an indication. You see videos of people there, it would be, I mean, anything's possible to fake, but it would be extremely expensive and hard to come up with an artist, make it fake, sell out all the tickets, get your videos of just a whole bunch of people dancing in front of them and put it up there and rely on that to kind of keep the train going. At the end of the day, you know, fake it till you make it isn't going to work with art, because it may get the initial reaction, but if people don't like the music they're playing or the art, you know, like with other stuff, if they don't like the final product, it's going to flop eventually. So unless you were actually really talented from the get-go, you know, you can fake it till you make it, but you're at the end of the day, you're not going to make it because people won't keep going. They'll see through it eventually, or you know, if it stinks, you go to the other room. If you're at a festival and there's lots of stages and you're just not feeling this vibe, you're going to go to the other stage.
Hmm. What about
Pretty much
guest
my
list?
take.
Is guest list the best thing ever? Do you feel a surge in popularity closer to your party dates?
I must say, the last 2 years, the phone has been ringing. The relaunch is just going
is
to
it
make
too
the guest
soon?
list
Is it
call
too
that much
soon?
more awkward because it's going to be like, "Hey Jesse, haven't spoken to you in 3 years this
I
time."
gotta tell you, it's
Like,
gonna be interesting for sure. I imagine the next,
guess
when is the next jam? Well, we got to get to that after. I've got some stuff
we're
I
going to
want to
get to
get to.
that, but I mean, if people didn't get the memo, I think the theme for 2021 is guest list is canceled.
I think
It's
maybe
time for
even
everybody to go and buy
extended throughout
tickets.
2022 as well. Is it? I mean, like,
Yeah,
I just, it's got to be.
that's
It's one of
true.
those.
Unfortunately, the theme for 2021 might be that 2021 is canceled, but for 2022, guest list is definitely canceled,
Do you
especially
feel like
2021 is
there's a
canceled.
potential for another lockdown? Is that what you're in? Like, I
There
mean,
is
you're.
always potential for another lockdown. I hope there isn't another lockdown. I mean, if you were to tell me 2 years ago that any of this would happen and that this would still be going on, you know, we've all had this conversation, I'm sure, many times during the pandemic.
Yeah,
There's no telling which way this is going to go. But if you want to
right.
still keep doing this, all you can do is hope for the best, plan for it, hope that it works out, and you know, hopefully it does. I know that our fans, like Destiny people, they can trust that if they buy tickets to our shows, we're going to take care of them because we've already proven it. You know, once we had a show that was canceled right before the lockdown. We actually chose to cancel it just before the lockdown because we felt it wouldn't be safe, not because the government was shutting it down. I mean, it would have shut down anyway. But so just to rewind for a second, the last Destiny show that was supposed to be was Andy C. I think it was March 27th at the Opera House, and the lockdown started, I believe, March 16th. It's in and around these dates. We canceled Andy C. I believe March 14th. So I was following the way this was going. We knew we had sold a lot of, I mean, the borders hadn't been shut down. We knew we had sold a lot of tickets to Americans. There was huge spikes in America. We didn't know what this was going to be. We didn't know how serious COVID was or wasn't at the time. If you remember, like going back to early March, this is when they were telling you to sanitize your groceries and stuff like that. We just thought it wasn't responsible to do the show, so we announced that we're postponing, that we would do a makeup date as soon as possible. We were hoping the makeup date would be in a few months, not, you know, 18 months later. But so be it. Anybody who asked for a refund in between now and then, we gave them their money back. And we promised that we would rebook a date as soon as possible. We have rebooked a date as soon as possible, and we've doubled it up with a second date. We've given everyone who originally bought tickets their free choice to choose if they want to go to, you know, which show they want to go, or if it still doesn't work out and they want their money back or they don't feel comfortable, that's cool too. So, you know, we took care of everyone who bought a ticket because I think it's important that if they trusted us as a promoter, that we're there to see them through and tell them that we appreciate their fans. We appreciate our fans. We appreciate their support. We know it's hard-earned money that they're coming up with to put into these shows. I mean, we've lost all of our time and all the money we've already spent thus far, but we kept at it. We promised we would have a booking as soon as possible, and now we have two bookings, so everybody has the choice of what they want, and we're taking care of them. And you know, if COVID suddenly explodes tomorrow and everything gets locked down and we have to postpone this again, I think that now everyone knows that we've demonstrated that they'll be safe by trusting us and buying these tickets, and we will make up these shows as soon as we can. But that said, I mean, we didn't have vaccinations then. There's a lot of people vaccinated here. I honestly think these shows are going to be able to happen. So, you know, that's it. We're planning that they are a go. We're selling to capacity. You know, the government may come in and change what things happen later, but we just have to plan for the best we can do with what the information that we have at the time.
Sounds that sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound great. I mean, it does. It doesn't. It sounds like please fuck no, don't let that shit happen again. But if it
Yeah,
does, it sounds
we're
like you've got it
prepared.
covered.
Yeah. If we
It
have to
sounds
come
like a
back
bit
with
of a
4 shows,
logistical
we'll come
nightmare with
back
the
with 4 shows.
tickets. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I said if we have to come back with 4 shows, we'll do 4 shows. Yeah, the cat is just not filling the utility closet. Sorry.
Is it because the cat is locked out, or is the cat locked in with you?
No, the door's open. If I were to zoom this out, maybe at the end we'll show how we did this. But
Okay.
like, he's just like, "What the hell are you doing sitting down here?" His litter box is over there. He's used to me playing video games on the couch now. He's like, "I want to sit next to you on the couch. You're down here talking to a computer. Give me attention. What the hell?"
Right.
Sorry about that. It'll pass. We'll give up eventually.
What were the greatest learning curves for you, like when you first stepped into the political dance floor?
Sorry, the audio cut out there, so I need you. What were the greatest learning curves? And then, yeah.
I'm just fucking with you. All right.
Of course.
Sorry. I know sometimes it's a little. Uh, did that work, or was it effective?
It's
No?
good. Go. Yeah.
Thank you.
I got it.
What were the greatest learning curves for you when you first stepped onto the political dance floor?
What do you mean by the political dance floor?
Throughout Utility Room, different promoters have gone and expressed some of the adventures that they've been upon in the early days of 2000, with competition being in venues that perhaps weren't exactly secured, other promoters calling upon other promoters or calling on them, for example, to have their party shut down. Did you have any of these experiences?
Yeah, I can share. Hi. I can share great experiences having parties
Great.
shut down. In fact, that's probably what helped lead to the relationship I later developed with Ryan. WEMF 2000 was 2001 was my favorite. So that's when I was working for Life Force Hardcore. That's when kind of electronic music was at its peak in Toronto, I would say, or at least the first peak of it. The underground, like before EDM or rave music was at its peak. It was getting attention in the media. Everything was growing. It was the number one thing. Unfortunately, there was a bunch of like overdose deaths that started happening around that time. And long story short, the police had it in their mind that they were going to shut down WEMF, that it wasn't going to happen. This was 2001 at Bob Cajun. The WEMF wasn't originally supposed to be at Bob Cajun. It had to move venues, and the police were basically going from venue to venue, shutting it down and convincing them not to throw the party. They found this farm, that was connected to some friends that they weren't going to talk out of not throwing the party. Made it look like they were doing a movie shoot, but the police kind of sat through it. They went in and they got like a full court injunction to stop the party. And my job, I was with me and Willer X. I think he was just DJ Willer at the time. Our job was actually to do a map point and hand out directions, because the police were setting up roadblocks to try and stop people from getting to the party. So again, no internet stuff. We gave people like maps, like of 4 different ways to get there, and said that if the police try to stop you or turn you around, not to listen to them. They don't have the right to do that, which was true. They weren't scaring people and telling them they can't come. But there's nothing to stop you from driving about your way, whichever way you want to go. And so we had to tell people that. We had to get everyone there. And the thought was that once we could get everyone there, they wouldn't shut it down. Unfortunately, we were wrong. We did get everyone there. And once there was a chunk inside, they read the injunction. They did step it down. They basically, the police said that if one more person comes in here, you're all going to jail. And they were like dead serious about it. And we came up with creative ways to kind of get around that.
What was the creative way of getting out of jail?
Well, it wasn't so getting out of jail. It was more buying us time. So the credit actually goes to Will Chang on this one, a friend of ours, a lawyer and a raver at the time, who was very into this. And he basically said to the police, look, we don't condone drug or alcohol use, but there's a lot of people in here who may have consumed substances, and it wouldn't be safe to send them all back on the road right now. So if anything happens to one person, this is on you for getting them out. And basically the police then thought about that, and they said, okay, here's what's going to happen. All the people who are inside can stay inside and camp there. You know, so they're not on the road because, again, and just to give credit to the people, it's not like people were going there with the intention to drink and drive. They were going there to party thinking they would drive home 3 days later, not 3 hours later. It wasn't
Right.
like, oh, I'm going to go and be reckless, you
Right.
know, but they didn't expect, nobody thought this would happen. It did happen. People at that point, if you've already had a few drinks, I mean, you're in the middle of a field in Bob Cajun. There's nowhere to go and walk around or like sober up or stuff like that. Like something's got to happen. So they said, okay, here's the deal. The people who are in there can stay in there, but you can't play any music. If the music goes on, you're going to jail. So we said, okay, fine. While lawyers continued to look over everything that was going on, they then realized there was a flaw in the injunction, and the injunction specifically mentioned Ryan Kruger because he was in charge of the party. And basically, they came up with a way that if Ryan sold the party to somebody else, which he did, I believe it was DJ SOS at the time, and I think he sold it for $10. He was no longer in charge. We went back to the police and we said, look, this isn't Ryan's party anymore. You have an injunction to stop Ryan Kruger. You don't have an injunction to stop DJ SOS. It was a long weekend and the courts were closed. So there was no way to get a new injunction. And the look on the police's face and the cops like, oh my God, these guys are still going ahead. The gates opened back up. Ryan had to leave. He had to stay off the property, and he was basically running, though he was not supposed to be running the show, he was running the show a little bit from his hotel room. But he wasn't on the property, and everybody came back in, and the party happened. And you know what, it was such a clusterfuck when it first happened, but when it finally went back on, the vibe in that first night was just amazing. And I should mention that the amount of cops they had up there, I mean, it was they brought on the orderly, it was the full riot squad. Like, they were all in there in gear and ATVs and ready to go, and they didn't know what they were going to be doing, but either way, we beat them at their game, and the party did happen. And that was it, you know? It was like, that was one of the challenges. There was just an energy in your blood to like go against the grain and make it happen. And, you know, lo and behold, nothing wrong happened at that party. Nobody died like the police thought. There was no fights. There was no riot. There was no nothing. Despite even them trying to shut it down, nothing bad happened. And, you know, had you tried to do that to a lot of other kinds of festivals or even genres of music, it wouldn't have gone down that way. You know, like if you want to even look at like Woodstock 99 is a prime example where, you know, there were riots and stuff like that because this is taking place at a similar time. And I remember, you know, again, sorry, the ADHD in me goes in multiple directions.
No, we're good. We're good.
Going to Woodstock 99, I remember there was the crazy riots. They burnt down shit. Police lost control of the crowd. And the media said that the only stage that actually like was there to party and enjoy the music and didn't engage was the rave stage. I remember they did have an electronic music, you know, Woodstock 99, and that was the vibe then. You were there to enjoy yourselves. You were there to respect each other, to respect the place that was allowing you to be there and the community. And it was so successful that the community actually invited WEMF back in 2002. But unfortunately, at that time is when the bubble burst. And WEMF 2002, you know, ended up being a total bust, like many of the events in 2000 at the end of 2002, and that's when the rave scene completely died. And again, cue my entry into Destiny with Ryan going into 2003. WEMF 2003 was supposed to be at Bob Cajun again, but the police did succeed in shutting that down for good that time. We started with a big WEMF lineup and all this stuff, and we always knew the police weren't happy, but the town liked the business that it generated and wanted us to be there. The police did a little bit more due diligence, and they discovered that the zoning didn't allow for the party to take place. It didn't allow for camping to happen on that property. And because of the zoning error, there was no time to fix it. They basically stopped it after we launched our marketing, after we spent all this time and we're ready to go. And we came up with what was called WEMF Plan B. And WEMF Plan B was when we moved the party, after the main flyer was out and everything, we made some changes. We moved the party to Trudeau Park. Sent out a new venue. We said it was a secret. We let it go then. The police continued to try and shut us down. They tried to shut down Trudeau Park, and we found a loophole then, which was that Trudeau Park was taking place at a campground. There was no way they could shut down the camping aspect, so they managed to shut down the concert and said you can't do live music outside. They found zoning and stuff, but it turns out Trudeau Park had a small little, I mean, it was small for throwing a festival. It was its own crazy thing, but they had their own building that they ran like a small hotel. They had a liquor license for a bar, and they had a banquet hall, and they were allowed to do entertainment no matter what the police said in there. So we were forced to basically make WEMF an indoor party in 2003 when Plan B was indoors. And we crammed everyone into this like tiny place. Like the camping was spread out, and we set up some small underground stages that people didn't know was affiliated with us so that we could still kind of spread people out to plan for it. But that is how we got WEMF to take place then. And it was pretty crazy. We had 5 rooms operating in this small, like a place smaller than the Gov, with like 4,000, 5,000 people up at WEMF. It was pretty nuts. I don't know if you remember that one.
Was that with like the mud floors?
It was so hot in that banquet hall. We tried to air condition it. So we thought of a lot of the problems we would have. They didn't have air conditioning. You know, you put all those people in there dancing in a hot summer, July, it's going to be sweating. And we brought in all these portable air conditioners, but they didn't work. They couldn't overcome it. It was so hot. DJ Rap was played, and when it was done, she grabbed like a huge jug of water, like all the ice had melted, you know, like behind the booth, and dumped it over her. And when DJ Rap's giving herself the wet t-shirt party on stage, you know that it was definitely hot. Like it was just sweating. It felt like we were raving in a sauna, which we were, to be honest. But you know, we got through it. We got through that party. People forgave us. They understood, I think, what had happened, and WEMF managed to continue. But you know, in the next years that followed, we were still playing a cat and mouse game with the police. That didn't kind of go away till I think 2007.
You know, I was going to ask you, can you think of a time during an event where something went terribly awry but was fixed and it ended up becoming something excellent? It sounds like Will Chang, superhero, like.
Will has been there to solve our problems many times.
I'm trying. I believe I've got him halfway to come to the show.
Yeah.
I think what most people don't know is that there's been a significant number of actions from Will that have benefited the Toronto dance floors still today, from stuff and actions and adventures that he was upon. Early 2000 to 2003, 2004, there was a battle that was waged in Toronto. It was called iDance. Maybe a battle isn't the right word, but I mean, ultimately it was a fight.
It was a battle.
And I mean, this is one of my favorite moments of actually DJing. And I tell people this, and they're like, "Oh, okay," but it was a really big deal that there was a press conference held inside City Hall for iDance, and they put me in the press conference to DJ with like a full sound system, right? And I was like, this is different, you know. And then it hits me like why I'm there, and that's why I still remember it being as important as it was. iDance, had iDance not happened, I'm not quite sure where would Toronto be right now had iDance not happened.
I'm sure a lot of artists that got really big in Toronto would probably not exist today because of influences they've met or experienced along the way that probably wouldn't have happened if iDance didn't happen. I mean, everything we've done together, you and I, Destiny, that wouldn't have taken place if it weren't for iDance, for one. But, you know, that's just one branch of the domino chain. There's so many more.
Of course. Yeah, it's all
stories that are just all spun off to these events. And it's, you know, it's quite amazing that, you know, a small family turned into this. Of course, electronic music got big globally and stuff like that, but Toronto's produced tons of banger, you know. So we've produced a lot of heavy hitters. And if not, we've influenced a lot of other heavy hitters along the way. You know, we were always one of the big cities. And this is for all music, not just drum and bass. Drum and bass, we were also massive too, just to touch back into the Destiny aspect. One of the biggest in the world. But all electronic, whether it's your stuff branching off to Deadmau5, branching off to, everything that Mark and Terrace. I mean, Flipside. I could just go on and on if I really were to try and brainstorm here of names that have influenced other international names and stuff that might not exist if it weren't for all of these foundations in the Toronto electronic music scene.
Toronto lineups that are like local lineups literally look like festival lineups. Like it's really nuts when you look at it and you see like who's on it. You're like, hey, that's Flipside, but like, oh, holy fuck, that's fucking Flipside, right?
Yeah.
Like that vape. If you could go to another promotional group's party, who would you go party with? Or is there another form of admiration towards another rave promoter or group?
Insomniac. Only because they were, Destiny and Insomniac both started around the same time, like 93 and 92. They may have actually started, I don't know if they started 92 or 94. I know they're off by like 1 year, or may even be the same. Back in the day, EDC was the WEMF of America, right? Like I think WEMF actually started before EDC. And they were always kind of branching this way. And then the other cool thing about Insomniac, back in the day was Pascal, who runs the show. He was a big drum and bass guy. So, there was Toronto was the big drum and bass promoters with Cyrus back at the time, and then later what, became Destiny. And then there was Insomniac in the States. And those were the two big main things. And we kind of were always, two trains kind of branching together. Or at least I felt that way. But of course, the market in the States is so much bigger because there's just so many more people. So you can get that many more people at a festival, and it allowed for that kind of growth where we're just limited here. Canada may be a big spread out country, but we don't have a lot of people. And the people are also spread out. It's so far to get to Vancouver to Toronto. So if we're doing a big show in Toronto and you're getting all these people, there's only so many people within, a certain hour's drive that are going to come to that show. But you try to do that exact same show in LA, you now pool into an area within a couple hours drive that's bigger than the whole population of all of Canada. So of course, naturally, you're going to grow that much bigger. And it's not about doing big shows as it is about doing big shows allows you to get the funding to try and do bigger things like bigger stages and better lighting and even, more artists, and what more can we do to make the experience that much better? And I feel like they've always taken that same angle and that same attitude. So that would be my take on it.
Was there a DJ or performer that you wanted so badly but were unable to book for a party?
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons and tons of them.
Something memorable, something you can think upon where you were like, fuck.
Daft Punk would be one of them. Okay. I think we came close. I mean, there's a couple we tried that we got really close and then it didn't happen. And there's other acts, we've had over the years that turned out to be way more massive than anyone could have imagined.
What would that be? Would you say?
Deadmau5 is one, and that happened because of you. We can get into that story after. Skrillex, we booked Skrillex for WEMF when he was not so big. I mean, he's way down on the flyer. I've got some of the flyers here. We could find it, but he's like way down on the flyer. And between when the marketing launched on that and then when the actual show happened, he became the number one artist at the time that year. This is 2011. Also on that same flyer, and again, barely any people hitting him, Calvin Harris. Calvin Harris became huge. And, he played at WEMF. He blew up just after WEMF. The year after WEMF, he became, I think, the highest grossing artist that year. And, I just remember then the set not being so busy, not because it stunk, but because it was the middle of the night. People were raving. They didn't want to walk back up the big hill, and the name wasn't as big as the time. Maybe they were hearing Skrillex or NDC. I can't remember who was going against them, but that was another name that blew up. I would have to think there's definitely a lot more. But we've broken a few artists, whether it was Wemp or some of the others, that turned out to just be too big to ever play for a show like us again. Not that we're not big, but again, when you're going with the global market and you have all those people in Europe and all those people in America, there's only so much you can do, in Toronto.
Do you still have all of your lanyards?
I've got a box of most of them. I should dig it up one time. I've also got a box. I've got a lot of like my mixtapes. So all the mixtapes I used to listen to in high school, like all the drum and bass tapes that you would get at Eastern Bloc and stuff like that, or order the Dreamscapes and stuff online. I've refused to throw that out. My wife's tried to throw them out many times. She's like, what do you need cassette tapes for? I'm like, you just don't get it. So those are still in storage. I always had this idea. So I found this while I was cleaning, since we're getting into it, and it's a couple of like so the camera can get in there, but a couple of scrappings of flyers and stuff we've done, and I always wanted to have like a scrapbook of. I don't know the angle of your show, but
I can see it.
Of some of the stuff.
It's like
and I never produced it, but
that's you and Ryan, right? It's original vibe and OS2 on that Ascension flyer.
Yeah, and he's got actually. So this is. Let's just pull this bad boy out there. We'll get it right on the camera.
It's like a it's drawn, but it's drawn in a fashion that's it's like graffiti style. It's graffiti meets comic book.
So I've got the Fuck Trance t-shirt on it, and he's got the No Jungle logo, which is the palm tree there. That was on the first Destiny flyer. So back in the day when it first started, there was like, there was a trance and jungle like conflict, and they prided themselves off like not having any jungle at the parties, even though there still kind of always was jungle at a Destiny party. Like,
you mean like Mystical on the dance floor? Like the conflict was on the dance floor, or where was the conflict?
Like it was actually on the flyer. So when you would have all the logos at the bottom of the flyer, you can see Tribe and a whole bunch of others. They're probably focus, but there was a No Jungle logo. That was like the Destiny thing. Oh, you're coming here, you're not going to have to hear that crap. And the jungle, like Cyrus, I think at one time they were doing like a no trance thing, and it was just like friendly beef, like like play, like elementary school play, but like that was the thing. It's amazing how it all merged back together, and then where it kind of branched off from then. I don't even remember what the original question was. Oh yeah, do I have the lanyard? So yes, I do have a lot of the lanyards. I didn't keep as many as I did. I wish I kept all the flyers that I did too. Like I even designed some of the first ones. I do have 3 big boxes to go through in my garage, like giant boxes of old rave flyers, both like the Destiny ones and like everything, Liquid Adrenaline, Life Force, all the nightclubs from the time. I kept like a lot of stuff. I had a huge collection. I still do. I haven't let go of that. I also have a bunch of mini DVDs that have to be digitized. There's some good videos.
You know what? I was gonna ask because I see the T-shirt you're wearing. 06. I think that was my favorite year.
Interesting. Why?
Because I think you guys. Was that the year that there was warehouses? It was like outdoor but indoor as well. And
this was the year we brought the cutting edge stage. So yes, there was. It was indoor outdoor. It was back at Trudeau Park, but this time outdoor.
So then maybe I can't remember. Maybe it was 05 then. All I know is that you billed me, and then after me was Donald Glaude, and then after that was Rabbit in the Moon. Except I think you gave me
2004.
Was that 2004?
2004.
So yes. I believe I had 30 minutes.
And it was in warehouses. You're correct.
And Donald had an hour, and then I'm not quite sure how much time Rabbit in the Moon had, but between the two of us was 90 minutes. And he looked at me and he said, "Let's just do this together, and that way we have more time." And I was like, "Okay, yes." And we started going at it. And all I remember, this has happened to me 2 times with Ryan actually, to different events. One was at Digital Dreams. That's a different story. But I'm gonna stay on topic. He just kept coming up on stage every 15 minutes and looking at us, going, "Can you guys keep going? Rabbit in the Moon isn't ready to go on yet." And so we were like, "Okay," because I don't know. This got to be like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. The place is just full, and I think we ended up playing for 3 or 3.5 hours or something, which we weren't supposed to do, obviously, but it was so much fucking fun. And like we ended up because I don't know, I only showed up with like a box of records. So after I'd already gone and played all the songs that I thought were like the ones, I had to flip into B's. So it got really arty and creative, and the place was with us. I mean, I can't. So
That,
those are.
there's a lot of those stories at WEMF where people
I
got stuck having to play like for 3 or 4 hours. I think at that party too, Decipher had to play for 3 or 4 hours at the start too because everybody else was late in traffic or something like that, and
wild,
he ended up, yeah,
right? Totally
open in
wild.
the first 4 hours.
What does Toronto need to do to bring back the epic drum and bass vibes to clubs and parties?
They're still there. All they got to do is go to NDC in November and see for themselves.
All right.
No, but you know what? I hate to say it, and we have epic vibes at like many of the shows, and especially if you're ahead, you get these things. But there's, our two best Destiny shows, and those are the ones we have in the calendar right now. As for me, Wemp aside, has always been Freak Out Halloween and the annual NDC party, and those are always the truest vibe to the late 90s, early 2000s that I remember. And I will always have friends who haven't been out in years and years, and they come back and they're like, holy shit, this is just like I remembered. And to hear that all the time, it's always like so great. And the vibes at those shows are always amazing. I wish I could say that about all of them, and they are all amazing in their own way, but those are the two that like are the most memorable every year. And I always feel like there's a bit of like, that vibe just refuses to die. It just won't go away as long as we keep doing these two shows.
I'm loving our perspective right now. By the way, do you know that? I
Why
don't
is
just
that?
mean I don't just mean the new overlay for the stream for the show and how it looks, but it literally looks like you're like a giant, like that. Because I'm standing I'm standing up, right. I think you're sitting down on a stool or something right now,
I'm
are you
sitting
not?
on a chair, yeah. I'm
Okay, yeah. I mean,
next to
but
the air
it's still,
conditioner, just comfy in the
even if
utility room here.
even if I'm a whole lot closer, yeah, I don't. It's a interesting perspective.
Yeah,
Big Jesse, giant Jesse.
cool.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Why the delay on Wemp?
What do you
And
mean?
not COVID, obviously.
You mean
Clearly,
another WEMF?
yeah.
Oh, like, will there be another WEMF? Maybe. Right.
Ah,
I don't know where to go to this. You know what? So
why?
it's a couple
Why?
things.
Okay.
Okay, let's put COVID aside.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
pretend COVID's completely over now, and now we can go
Totally.
back.
Let's pretend together. I'm ready.
Yeah, we're all way older now. We both like, the DJs, the promoters, the crowd. Most of the crowd has multiple kids, myself included. That's kind of locked down, but I still feel like there's a desire to have a reunion or to do something, especially with how many years it's been. But the window's closing. COVID is kind of making it impossible. We did discuss having a WEMF reunion, in the next year or two. But now with things, we don't know where they're going. It becomes further and further away, and we can't compete with the big mainstream festivals anymore. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of people saying, oh, they want to go, and you don't have to get all the biggest names and stuff like that. But to get all the biggest names, it costs way too much money. We'd have to charge too much. We can't afford to risk that anymore. We're not a big corporate. It's still just two guys paying with their own money in their own pocket and their savings accounts. And, we don't have all these investors. We rarely get big sponsors. We've never gotten, big independent grants, even though we've tried. Um, and it's a lot of work. It's a full-time job, and we have other jobs. But that said, I mean, it is something that's special to us. I know Ryan and myself would do it again and would do a reunion if kind of the dominoes were to fall in the right direction. We could find a way. You know, we've talked about the idea of maybe doing it. What's it called? Like crowdsourcing it. If people really want to go and they're willing to put up the money and they all put in and they're all kind of, you know, like a member or an owner and stuff like that, that would be one way to kind of fund it and make it happen. And then we'll put in the time. And the other problem, quite frankly, is the venue. You know, I don't know if you I don't know if it would be important to everyone to have the music go all night outdoors anymore, but that's become one of the things that you just really can't do anymore. You know, when we were doing the last few WEMFs and it was way up there, that was as far as you had to drive in order to be able to play music outdoors all the time. And even that would still bring in a few complaints. But
Do you think people would not drive 3 or 4 hours to go to this event?
I don't, but at the same time, I mean, some people would, but is it enough to make it happen or make it worthwhile? At the end of the day, we could do it closer if we didn't have to play music all night, and now festivals do go more during the day. But at the same time, that was never, as much as we tried to make that the WEM 5, it never as the WEM 5. So I don't know if it has to be all night anymore. Maybe it's somewhere in between, but the problem is even in in-between time, it's hard to do anything loud outside past 11 o'clock, period. That's just kind of the rules now. So I don't know if that would kill the vibe or change it too much. But I think there is a desire for all of us and our friends to get back together in a field somewhere. And, you know, whether it's a boutique WEMP festival, some type of reunion, there should be something. We would like to do something.
You know, I've
We've just never managed to make it transpire.
I've talked to you off screen, you know, prior to tonight's show. Obviously, I've talked to you about this. I just spent a week with Ryan. I said it to him as well. You know, I think the idea I guess the mechanical, the logistical, operational idea of Burning Man. You know, a lot of people are unaware. For example, I'll say, I'm playing at Burning Man. Someone will be like, "Holy shit, that's crazy!" But Burning Man itself, as the organization, does not book any of the artists. So when you hear or know of somebody that is going to be performing at Burning Man, that's happening through the efforts of the camp that they're probably camping at. Maybe not, but probably. And I think to myself, could that be WEMF? That the idea of WEMF when it started was an acronym for World Electronic Music Festival, but then it just kind of became WEMF. At least that's what I think. And although the branding may initially would have started with that acronym, the transformation over time and the usage of it by the people determined what the meaning might actually be. And now it's just WEMF, which is a funny looking word that is fun to pronounce. and obviously meaning to a giant camping trip that you could party at and hear awesome electronic music. What if that music was put into the power of the people and Destiny was just organizing the space for people to go camping at? And then now you've got a bunch of stages that are, I guess, renegade. Who knows what efforts campers will put into their stages, much like Burning Man. I mean, Guy La Liberté from Cirque du Soleil had a stage at the last Burning Man I went to in 2019. Holy superfuck. The amount of money that was spent was ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's going to do that. Some won't. Some will probably just show up to party. But wouldn't that be a thing? And is the camping and the vibe, is that not the main idea?
You couldn't have a WEMF reunion without camping. If there's no camping, there's no WEMF, period. So we'll get that out of the way. Yes.
Okay.
We tried to bring WEMF into that direction in the last few, actually, leading up to it. That's, you know, Ryan and I were both attending Burning Man regularly at that time. So we understand the influence and that kind of idea. We were pushing people to do different theme camps and renegades. We even helped people with, you know, giving them plots and stuff like that. and stuff was starting to grow and go in that direction, but still not enough. But the problem is, it still runs into the same problem of having music outdoors past 11 o'clock, which is, it's just, again, it's a major roadblock for noise complaints. The other problem is that because Burning Man is so established, people have seen the light, so they're willing to spend all that money and stuff like that. WEMF would be starting again from the ground up, that it would be challenging. That said, if we were to do a reunion, I would still encourage or find a way to, get people to do the community stages again. And maybe we would do one stage, they would fill in the others, and it would be camping. Like, I could see that vibe happening, and I'm sure it would be awesome, and all of that on a smaller scale. But again, it's still a lot of risk, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of work. And if it doesn't succeed, then, it's not worth the wrath, unfortunately.
Is there a form of autopilot that you think that you're on when it's going to parties, that you can see the success before you throw it?
You can see from the ticket sales. At the end of the day, we have an old saying, numbers don't lie. And they all seem to follow a formula and sell. And as much as, if an event isn't selling that well, and you're wishing that there's going to be this one day, like, oh, everyone's just waiting until they get paid, and the day before the party, they're all going to buy thousands of tickets, it's just not going to happen. You almost know ahead of time. What's really sucks, or what's really risky, is when you sell out in the event. Let's take the COVID one, for example. NDC sold out months in advance. The biggest advance sale we had ever had, in the history of Destiny, like 3 or 4 months in advance, and the show had to be canceled. It didn't happen. So we were facing the challenge: do we give everyone their money back immediately? We've already spent thousands. Do we postpone? How is this going to go? Are people still going to be here? We touched on that a bit, so I don't want to say the same thing. But, at least if you see a show isn't selling, then that's going to come. It stinks when something else happens, whether it's whether it's a tornado, an act of God, weather, flights, anything that could happen. Anything could happen that could throw a wrench into the show. And that's the surprise. In terms of if it's not going to be busy or stuff like that, the ticket sales don't lie. It's going to follow a pattern. It'll get to a certain number that it's going to get to. And you pretty much just kind of know where it's going.
Does this form of premeditated success off of the tickets, does this kind of become a buzzkill for the event for you?
Totally. I want to say it doesn't. There's many times, we've had many successful events. We've had many, we're just talking financially here. We've had many financially well events, and we've had ones where we've completely lost our shirts and had to start, from the ground up, like literally spent every penny and then some. Going into a show that's losing money, and it's losing money, it completely stinks. Thinking of all the things you could be doing with that, never mind the time you wasted, but like take the family on a cruise, go do all these other things. I just try to tell myself at the end of the day, it's an expensive party. People are still here having a good time. You might as well have a good time too, because you've already paid for it. You've already lost the money. That's not going to change anything. So just enjoy it. And try not to let it, get to you. Try to be the patron who doesn't have to concern themselves with all those things. There's times to feel sorry for yourself and be depressed later, and it'll be after the party. And to try and kind of keep that in mind. Luckily, that hasn't happened as often as they've been good parties. Hence, we're still doing this, but there's been so many times where it has been like a yo-yo, whether it's WEMF or the events or we've just done hundreds of shows now that it's it's so hard to look at it. Like, I can't even believe how many shows I've done looking back on it. That we've gotten used to it to an extent, and at one point, when you're doing it all the time, it almost becomes autopilot. Like when I was working in a nightclub and doing this week after week, you become a little bit desensitized to it. At least with Destiny, and it's every once in a while, and special events, it makes it more special, and it makes it more fun to look into it, and a bigger impact.
Thank you. Do you remember earlier we caught up for a second, and then I had to kick you off the phone, which is something I do with guests. I'm like, don't catch up with me right now, please.
Yes.
Which is great because we know each other. Because sometimes it's been awkward, or someone's been like, oh, okay, I guess I'll talk to you later. And I'm like, no offense, we're gonna do it all over again, and then it's just not cool.
Yeah.
But I did say you said Blake and we'll be at how much time?
Yeah, you're right. We're doing good, right? Yeah.
Hey, you're
Is
having
this you
fun.
wrapping
So
it
am
up,
I,
or
which is great.
are we going in? I'm ready to go.
I'm not kicking you out, but I am at I'm at a place right now where I'm going to put you in the hot seat. I'm going to
Okay.
transform it a little bit too. You know, typically, if you've caught some of the episodes, you'll see typically I'm talking to music people. I mean, everyone on Utility Room is music, but I mean players. And
All
so
right.
when I'm talking to the players, I'll put them on the spot and be like, tell me the three tracks that never leave your box. You know, for rescue or for success, what are these three songs? I'm not going to do that with you,
Okay, good.
even
Because
though I know that, yeah, even though I know that you have history as a DJ,
the one that
and
goes bump, bump, bump.
it was definitely very interesting to learn tonight that you've got an itch to go and bring it on back. There's really easy tech to do that right now. By the way, you don't need to get traditional decks anymore. You can,
Well, so I will say that's another thing. Okay, if I was starting off DJing and promoting at the same time now, it would have been a very different story because you weren't doing it manually. Would have taken off. Nobody would have known the better when you're like really mixing or not mixing and all that. And I would have been flying the world like you and maybe putting parties. Like who
oh,
knows? That could have
I
just been
love how
the joy
simple you
in,
made
that I
that
did
sound.
because
It's great.
doing the party kind of gave you the foot in the door, and then everyone wants you to book you, like you know what I mean. And we'll put you on our party. Just let me play yours, and it does make that happen.
Right,
And
sure.
because you can use computers to bring your skills up that much easier, it would have been a different vibe. So perhaps it's a good thing in the sense for doing all the parties that didn't happen because it led to me doing Destiny, which led to me doing all these other things that I've been involved in. And that transformation is still happening now. Um, and I know we're not supposed to talk about the upcoming stuff till the very end, but we're just going to get into
No,
one thing
let's
that's
no
non-rave
here. I mean,
related.
we're kind of here. We're
We're
close.
here,
It's not
yeah,
like
yeah. It's been a bit, yeah.
we're
So
approaching it. You're in the final tier of Utility Room.
we do have a pivot of an idea I had, and I'm happy to say that that's finally happening. So if we rewind back to COVID when nothing was going on, and I was like, okay, well, this is retirement and take it day by day. We were, I said I have two kids now. One's 6, one's 3. Obviously, rewind back 18 months, they were that much younger, and you're trying to find ways to entertain your kids when everything was shut down. And a bunch of these light shows had started to pop up in Toronto. There was I think it was Halloween at the time, and I went to one, and my kids loved it because there was nothing else going on, and there's only so many times you can do Netflix, and it was something to do, and I was like, oh my god, we know how to do all this stuff. This is not only is this easy, look at all the people who are coming here. They're into it, and I'm like, not only do I want to do this, I want to make it that much better.
Right.
We could take all the rave lights and the production and everything, and what if we put on a light show for kids or families or even for older people who had nothing to do. We could play rave music or whatever, and made a few phone calls. We did start working on that. Ryan was into it. We put together some other peeps who have been around from the rave scene since the start. We got together, we formed a group, we came up with this idea called Drive Through Funco, where we would do our own drive-through light show. We put in a lot of work, we put in our own money, we had a cool downtown venue, we did everything, and then the second lockdown hit. And although we thought drive-throughs would be exempt from lockdowns because that was the information that government had told everyone in advance, they changed their mind because they're like, no, it's spreading too much. Drive-throughs aren't to happen. And literally days before we were supposed to launch the event, this was announced and everything got shut down. We're in the hole for a bunch of money, all of our time. We put it on hold and said, okay, well, we'll see. Maybe there'll be an opportunity to do this again. We applied for grants. We didn't happen. But we did apply for a grant to try and do this show this coming fall. And we just found out 2 days ago that we did receive a grant from the government on the Reconnect Festival. So there
Congrats.
will be a drive-through, or hopefully it'll actually be able to be presented as a walk-through light show that will blow everyone away for families and stuff like that. And it's just another branch using our skill set to entertain people and give people some memories or something that they wouldn't otherwise experience, if we didn't do these kind of things. So I'm excited to be working on that coming up this fall. It's going to be a lot of work. This just happened, literally 2 days ago. So we're getting ready hardcore to launch something new in the fall, on top of the fact that we have the Destiny Halloween show and the 2 NDC shows. So there's a lot of shows in the books. I hope they all happen. At the very least, we know for sure this light show is going to be a thing. God willing, it's not another crazy lockdown and all of these things happen. But at the very least, there will be a form of COVID entertainment. And it was just so fun during that lockdown when we were out there. Like, I can't say the venue now, but it's a big venue that lots of people have been to, very famous. And, I was with like Joel Dubin and Rob and out with Ryan and Matt Ryan, and bringing out the old measuring wheel and measuring fields and parking lots again and marking where things would go. I had all that like energy back in my blood that I forgot. I felt like I was planning WEMF again, and it was exciting to be doing those kind of things again.
Listen, do you hear? We have you captured on video doing that right now, okay? I'm just saying, you know what? I'll tell you something. I think that there's almost too much faith put into the idea of metrics, perhaps, that y'all follow, regardless of whatever success that you're following with it. Earlier in the show, I was talking to you about how do you navigate through the bullshit waters of social media, the gray water of social media, and because of your rich history with guerrilla style marketing on a street level, surely you've seen that something that could potentially be, I don't know what the fuck this is, could 5 minutes later turn into, yeah, I'll see you there. Don't you think with WEMF and just the announcement that you guys were doing it would be like,
who knows? A lot of people have that faith. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably do have that faith.
Again, a way to gauge it, if we did some sort of crowdsourcing type thing, if everybody really wants us to do it, it's almost like put your money where your mouth is. I can't afford to, risk my house on another WEMF.
Is that where you think the stakes would be at?
It's part of the stakes. I also have, I work another full-time job, so I don't have the time and dedication to do it anymore.
By the way, I'm being sincere. Like, I mean, a lot of people have no idea, like, behind the scenes, like, what that would fucking
It's so much time, it's so much work. A lot of people think it's just, calling a bunch of people and putting out the flyers. They have no idea the logistics and the negotiations and the amount that goes on behind the scenes to make all those things happen and to do them right, so that it is as organized as possible, so that it is a good experience for the ticket holders and that they want to go. And at the end of the day, there's a reason why it had such a cult following, and it was special. Like, a lot of people's lives rotated around all these like WEMF dates. Like, they can think back to, oh yeah, that was, the year of this, or we had so many people get married at WEMF. We've had, it's been a game changer. I can't tell you how many people have emailed us saying that they met the person that they, never mind the wedding that happened at WEMF, but they met someone at WEMF and now they're married and they have like 3 kids. And had that not happened, who knows where their lives would have been, and it's cool to hear all these stories and to know that we helped contribute to all of these memories.
There's no mask for that smile, Jesse Brown. There's no mask that you could do right now. So where there's a will, there's a way, and perhaps it's your destiny.
Perhaps.
Here we are, Jesse. What is going to be the most challenging question of our episode tonight on Utility Room? I would think of you as a rave connoisseur. Mm-hmm. What are the 3 best parties that have happened in Toronto?
iDance 2001. We covered that one already, but I will put that up there.
Good.
That was the one. Science Center 1999 or 98. So the Citrus, the second Science Center party, the one where it was the whole open everything. That was just cool and fun and different, and like, 10,000 ravers all wandering that place, and they kept the exhibits open. You could even go and make your hair stand up. And I remember when it ended at 5 a.m. and like back then it was like, oh my God, they're ending so early at 5 a.m. This is such bullshit. And someone pulled the fire alarm, and all the ravers were flooding onto the streets at 5 in the morning, and all the fire department was flooding into to their check of the place.
It's an appropriate end to the party.
Yeah, an appropriate end to the party.
Right.
It's also, again, like looking back, a lot of these parties, the first Destiny, they used to give you breakfast. Like they used to go to 11 a.m. the next day. Like, what the hell were we thinking back then? Like, I can't even picture it now, but I don't know. I guess I'm just too old. I've got nothing against the people who have the stamina to keep going anymore, but not me. And you know what? Many of the WEMPs. I don't want to narrow down which one, because there were.
You don't have
a
favorite that you can cite?
Ones.
Like I was saying, you said the year I'm referring to is 2004. I don't know why I think it was 05 or 06, but I'm obviously going to take your word for it.
04 was good. 04 was awesome. 05 was, I got to see the flyer to remember where they all were in my head. So 04 was the Wasaga Beach one, which wasn't actually at Wasaga, but it was down the street. That one was also cool. I just want to talk, we talked about the police thing at the beginning. The cops from 2003 caught up with the cops from 2004, so it's different OPP detachments. So when you go into a different area, there's a cop from that area who will go and tip those guys off that were doing this party, try and scare it and think the sky was going to fall, all organized, and what we were doing was legal. So they couldn't stop it. But I remember, we did work with the cops, and they said to us at the end, they were like, I totally get it. When first they gave us all this beef, but at the end of the party, they're like, you have a lot of educated people here. You've got a whole mixed crowd. There were no fights. There were no nothing. This is just a lot of young people blowing off steam, having a good time. And I remember what it was like to be a kid. And I get it. They told us, I think there was one, I think it was 04, 05, where the cops actually, they sent us, they took this so crazy, they had a surveillance plane flying over the event. So they were like, they sent us a follow-up email. They're like, we happen to have a surveillance plane in the area, and we thought you might want a photo of, one of your shows for your last hurrah. And they're like, well, although we can't.
Who greenlit that operation? You know what I mean? I want to.
Many times, a lot of money has been spent trying to stop WEMPs over the years, and it was just.
What we need? We need a plane for the fucking rave.
It only energized us to
with a straight face, though. Like getting it as an order. Yeah. Get in that plane. Yeah. Take some pictures. Did you see the glow sticks?
2005, I think, was the one in Orangeville. And that one was, we told the cops, we had good recommendation from the other cops. Everything was going perfectly fine. And then there happened to be one person. There's always one. That's all it takes, unfortunately. He took some hallucinogens. He got too high. He did some stuff he shouldn't have done. And there happened to be one neighbor that was attached to this location. And they had a car. They decided to leave the car unlocked with the keys in the car. This dude got into the car. He stole the car. Again, because he was high, like we found this out kind of after. He initiates a fucking police chase with the OPP. They're chasing this car down the road. He barrels the car, like spins out, barrels the car. It rolls like 3 or 4 times into some dude's fence who happens to be a city councilor for the town. And then on top of that, the brand new car, like totally in The Simpsons, it fucking blows up and lights on fire. The guy's totally fine. But if you can picture the city councilor being like, oh yeah, I was told it's not so bad. And he looks out his window and there's like a car on fire in his front lot. His fence is down. Like, yeah, that was it. We were not allowed back. Not only were we not allowed back, they had like a follow-up event. We had to go to like a community town meeting. It was like pitchforks were out to get us. And they passed a law banning the event from ever taking place there again. And they stickied it on their website as part of one of the resolutions that the event will never be welcomed, back in this town. But it still sucks because it was, if it weren't for that one incident, it was flawless. We would have been like, smooth sailing. It didn't happen. We'll go through the history. 2006, the one I'm wearing, that was the rock one. That one was pretty good. 2007 was Welland, Niagara Falls. That was the one where originally they were going to try and shut us down. And then they changed their mind. without getting into too much, we knew some people there, like the mayor and stuff. We convinced them that this wouldn't be such a bad thing. It would be good for tourism. We got them to work with us. And lo and behold, they did see that it was awesome for the town and the community, and they liked us having there and stuff like that. And it is amazing when we change people's perspectives on electronic music, on raves, because that's basically what they were back then, um, and the whole thing. Um, yeah, no, there were good ones. It's hard to pinpoint which is the best one. If I had to say the best truly went, probably the second last one. That was just a really good one all around. It was a great lineup. It was a great time. It was the vision of where we wanted this to be going. That was the first time we had the Tower of Destiny, when we were inspired from the Tower of Babylon that was at Birdie Man, and we brought in that whole crew, and that was the whole idea of, showcasing this bringing in an art show that or art aspect, that hadn't been seen here. Of course, that stuff and projection mapping became a big thing after that, and people, now it wouldn't have the same wow factor, but at the time this was brand new technology to do the projection mapping and build that kind of a stage and bring in those people. So they were all good. It was always great to show people new things and try all of these. I just love that we still get to do it. It makes life that much more interesting. It's nice to see the smiles it brings on people's faces, and to still go to these parties and be like, oh, this is the vibe and the experience and some of the emotions that I remember feeling 20 years ago, and we're still able to do that now.
Earlier, or even earlier, at the very start of the episode, my very first question to you was, why? Why are you a rave promoter?
It's in your blood. It's hard to stop. But I think that kind of answered it on that last.
I was just about to say, I feel like you just wrapped it right there, and I like that. It's in your blood. Again, talking to music performing people on the show, I'll ask, what was the vampire bite of electronic music for you? Because that's kind of like what it is. Once that bite happens, you're now the creature of the night. It's like a siren call. Even if you think to yourself, nah, get pulled back in. And it becomes almost like a relationship past the affair. It's really, it's almost like a half-half. And this is how I feel. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of that with you as well. And it's very relative. A lot of what it was that you just expressed about your feelings and the idea of community, bringing people together, seeing the joy that is emitted from the community via the events that you're putting together and organizing. This is the reason why. It's amazing. And I love it.
Yeah. they've all. I'll just say one last thing. They've all had their challenges. They've all been unique. But when you do them and you see that feeling and they're good and it happens and you pull it off, you just want to do it again and you want to improve on it. I think there's always a desire inside to be like, wow, that party was so good, but what could we do to make it even better?
Is escalation always on your mind when you're doing events? Are you walking around Destiny and going, next time it's this?
Totally. Can't stop it. To a point that I think it pisses people off. Like, so you know what I mean? There's lots of friends, you tell them to come to the party and have a good time and you want to talk to them, but then you're so busy because you're like, oh, that's wrong. That needs to be there. This is supposed to be on. This should be done better at the door. And so you can't talk to people and they want to say hi to you and you want to have conversations and just enjoy yourself. But that enjoyment level for me doesn't get to happen till usually towards the very end of the party.
Does this lend to the idea that you're not able to stop and smell the flowers at a Destiny party because your focus isn't on the present, it's upon the future? Or do you feel divided?
At the end of the day, I mean, if we, like a restaurant, if a restaurant gives you bad food once, you're not going to go back. And if we screw something up to the point, and it can't be something that we screwed up, but, you have an asshole at the door. You hired a big security company. You can't control who that one person is, but that one person could screw everyone up to the point where they're just pissed off. They're going to take it out on you. They had a bad experience it's not going to be the right thing, or they're getting held up, or you know what I mean, or you find out a story, something like that, like it's taking too long to get into the bathrooms. There can be little things that are really going to screw up people's nights, and I just want to try and eliminate as many of those things as possible so that people can have like the perfect time and know that when they come to our shows, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be music that they're into, and it's going to be a good vibe and memories that they'll hopefully cherish, you know, when they look back on all this.
Jesse, why the switch from trance to drum and bass? Besides your obvious love for the genre, which was clear because that's what you were DJing, but how did you like Destiny was not drum and bass. It was not jungle. It was not raga. Maybe it had the side room for it, but it was the side room. Now primary, perhaps only, solely.
Yeah, that was more again. So that was the music I was into at the time. I can actually remember the moment when I went from. So trance was never my thing. I did like it, but I was more into house or other electronic music. And that vampire moment when I went from other music to drum and bass, like really liked it. I'm trying to remember the promoter. I think it might have been a Next Junction party at the Bingo Hall, if you can remember the Bingo Hall up at 7 in Woodbine.
Yeah.
We managed to do another Destiny party there. I managed to bring back a lot of all the old venues that had disappeared, and that was a lot of the Destiny thing for me too, was bringing back all these venues from the parties I remembered going to, you know, in high school, university, and making them happen again. So, for instance, the first Destiny Halloween was the first rave party back at the docks. After that, or around that time, we also brought a rave party back to Palais Royale. We brought a party back to the Bingo Hall. We got to bring back all these experiences that if we hadn't made these calls and convinced people to do the shows, they wouldn't have happened again, and it kind of paved the way for all these things. So I think that's one of the moments was trying to bring that vibe. But ultimately, in terms of why did Destiny shift to jungle, when the rave scene was completely dying, drum and bass was still big and was still it had its own underground niche. There were still parties going on. I mean, the biggest Cyrus was pretty much done, and that's why I approached Ryan, because otherwise I would have just continued promoting for Cyrus. But Ruckus Empire was doing lots of shows. They were still proving that you could get, you know, 1,000, 2,000 people out. And although that wasn't the big 10,000 people that we had, you know, in 1999, it was still a very good sized show and a great vibe and a good party. And rather than start completely from the ground up as a rookie, I thought it made more sense to approach Ryan and ask him to do the show. And of course, he was like, well, you know, Destiny's a trans company, but I said, this is, you know, there's more people into this right now than there is that. Let's do it together. And that's when the first few Destinies started, as drum and bass would be in the main room till 2 or 3 in the morning. And then trance would take over. And we had a side room, and the two sides would switch. So if we were getting more people who were coming for drum and bass, they would still be able to have a full night of drum and bass, because when it started to thin out, it would just switch to the other room anyway. And then as that continued to grow and the other one continued to go down, that's when it just basically switched. And next thing you know, we've been doing this like 20 years later. We became the biggest drum and bass promoters in Canada, you know, if not one of the biggest in North America as well. I mean, Toronto, it's worth mentioning that Toronto was always one of the top drum and bass cities in the city. So it was natural for us to kind of carry that torch. Sorry, not in the city, but in the world.
Sorry, yeah, I was like
torch.
a matrix within a matrix.
Yeah, no, Toronto was the biggest, yeah, right? Like it was big in the UK, it was big in Toronto, it was big in LA, and then it was just kind of a handful of places. And when I say big, I mean like, you know, all the UK guys used to say that when they come here, it felt like they were still dancing over there. And so not only did we have the same demand to hear all the artists from overseas that other people, you know, across the States and in, you know, in other places globally wouldn't recognize or wouldn't care to see, but we also had a thriving local community. And I think all the local artists that we had, in conjunction with the fact that we followed it so well overseas, really just, it was the right fusion to make it all come together and just keep this thing going.
Do you feel connected to the local drum and bass community in Toronto?
I do. Not as much the newest guys, and that's always been a regret. But it's, to be honest, I mean, I feel like I'm just old now, and it's not going to be the same aspect for me to talk to someone who's much younger and be on that same vibe. So I kind of go through someone.
Why do you feel that way?
try to think back of how I would feel when I was 20 talking to someone who was 40. It's just, mentally I don't think I'm 40, but I am. I mean, I'm reminded of that when I wake up tired or I do other things or I can't stay up late all night anymore. I don't know. I guess there's just something about it. I want to still have that vibe and, you're young at heart and stuff like that. But I feel like there's just too much of a disconnect there, or there's going to be.
I think to myself, when I first started going out, I was under 20, and all the DJs that were heroes were either touching 40 or north of. And still right now, many of the big touring DJs around the world are either touching 40 or north of 40.
But that's because those are the big ones. You said like the new up and coming is where I feel the disconnect.
So,
and I
well,
I
that's
want
what
to
I was
have
going to
that
say.
connection.
Like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you.
No, you.
I want to have that connection, but I guess the other problem is that, I can't go out all the time. Like I used to. When you were a promoter, you were going out every week. Like we used to go out, every weekend plus a couple midweeks. Like it was all the time going out, talking to people, hearing the music, staying on top of the vibe, meeting, and I don't have that now. So I feel like it would be artificial to try and pretend.
Well, hold on for a second though. Hasn't the process also changed? I mean, the actual physical process has changed. Like, for example, one of the big reasons why it was necessary to go out 2-3 times a week wasn't just to connect with people, but was also music. The accessibility on the connection with people and the accessibility with the music. It wasn't now. Now it's on demand. But then it wasn't. So it made sense to go and be there and be a part of it.
Yes. Again, but so the problem with the internet is it's so big you don't know where to look first.
Okay.
Right? So you're saying, sure, you can discover and all these things, and it's so global. It's kind of hard to tell. I feel that Destiny's in a place now where there's other promoters, and that's great, and we want there to be thriving, and we want there to be as many different choices as possible and stuff like that. But we focus on our things. If something gets our attention and someone works hard enough, they'll either get our attention or we'll notice it at one of the other shows, almost the incubators, to get to the next phase. So I try to always pay attention to what's happening at all the other shows, and I try to rotate, as many artists as I can through, but we don't do as many shows anymore, so that's become harder and harder to do. But if something really drives our attention, yeah, I want to get it on the show. I want people to see it. I want it to go further. I want to push it in that direction. I've always had a desire to showcase the music to people who have never heard it. So, you know what I mean? When we started to branch into the rock and roll stuff, again, getting lost, but, doing the Cutting Edge Music Festival and stuff like that, we brought
Senf.
Andy C on the lineup. It was like, yeah, Senf, the short-lived Senf. We had Andy C and stuff like that. It's like, there was a whole new crowd of people. I always thought there was a natural fusion when that was getting big to experience. If these people heard drum and bass, they would fucking love it, and they would start going to these shows and stuff like that, and getting it played on mainstream radio. There was one school of thought where it's like, this is our underground scene, and we don't want it to be mainstream, and it's cool because all these people don't see it. And at the same time, there was also, wait a second, how many people would actually love this music if they heard it for the first time, legitimately, and what can I do to play it and to reach them? Because if people came to this vibe and they saw this show, they would fucking love it because it is just awesome, right? The vibe is awesome, and when it's going off, and I bring someone who's never been into the scene, to one of our shows that's like really going off, they fall in love with it too. I can't tell you how many times we've had like Andy C shows, and I have the bartenders telling me, I never thought I liked drum and bass music, but wow, this was such a good vibe. Like I could see myself, like dancing to this on my own. I'm like, well, welcome. So
Awesome sauce.
yeah.
Where do we find Destiny online?
DestinyEvents.ca.
And what would be on
also
the website?
all the social medias, Destiny Events. So, at Destiny Events, Facebook /Destiny Events. There's a YouTube Destiny Events. If we ever work on our Twitter skills, there is a hashtag Destiny Events. I try to keep it all together. So yeah, destinyevents.ca is the place to see the upcoming
And one more
stuff that
time, the
we've got
future
going on in
events
the
coming
history.
up.
Yeah, so we've got Freak Out. This will be our 14th or 15th annual. See, I should actually look at the thing because we've been doing it for so long. But then we missed COVID, and there was one year we had to skip. But again, the first Halloween Destiny was 2003, and we've kept that going almost every year, with the exception of one year and COVID. So it's glad to be back, and it's at. Oh, actually, we haven't announced the venue yet. So I'm going to cut myself there, but it's another really good one. It's an old school rave venue that everyone loved, and a lot of them have been to, and I'm excited to be putting that one on. And then we've got the 2 NGC shows end of November. The Saturday's already sold out. The Sunday's still going. It was my hope that people will go to both, because why not do, first time ever 2 nights in a row? And then we'll see where 2022 is going to go from there, because that's pretty much it going into it. So
I'll be there.
We'll see, but yeah.
I'm stoked.
Cool.
Cheers. Thanks a lot for doing this with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah?
We'll have to do it again sometime. All right.
Absolutely giant. Don't hang up just yet, okay?
Okay, cool.
Everyone, thanks for being with us in the utility room. Super thanks to Mr. Jesse Brown from Destiny. Awesome having you on the show. All y'all out there, super special. Really appreciate you. Giant. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the things that make the room go boom. And we will see you next Saturday.